马里克先生，您说过，经济危机是美国式管理的危机。那么，管理对于今天世界的意义非常重大。您是不是可以深入的为我们来解释一下您的这个看法呢
？Management is important for the crisis for two reasons. First of all, because the crisis as such is much more a crisis and collapse of management than it is a crisis of economics. But people, experts, treat it as if it were an economic crisis and financial crisis alone, or that this is the most important aspect on the crisis. I see it completely different, because it is a failure, and one can prove that, of the bad functioning and wrong functioning of large organizations. In particular, for instance, the financial systems organizations, the banks, all sorts of hedge funds, etc., etc. Otherwise, the financial system would not have collapsed. You see? So that's one point. Another point is that, yes, and behind it, in order to make it even clearer, behind it is the US approach, the Anglo-Saxon approach of management, the shareholder value approach, basically, the asset value approach, which is the cause over the 20 years or so since it exists, has caused the greatest misallocation of economic and social resources ever in history. So, on the other hand, we need management. It is the invisible function, invisible though nevertheless important function, all-important function, to meet the challenges of the crisis. But it needs a completely different kind of management. So I compare these to an old world, which is conventional management, to a new world, which is a management for mastering today's complexity and dynamics and changes. And that in many respects is completely different, almost or right out the opposite of what is understood by management and what is educated in the business schools.
这场金融危机从2009年持续到现在，还没有缓解的趋势。您认为它还会持续多久？
I very early predicted already this crisis, and now it happened. That's on the records, even in Chinese television. I described it first, what risks are building up, in 1997 in my book on corporate governance. First, the crisis has not yet been understood. It is treated as a financial one. And second, therefore, it is treated in the wrong way. So we need totally new kind of management systems, which have as their basis cybernetics and science, the most important complexity sciences. See? So it is two-sided. The Anglo-Saxon approach caused the crisis, and another approach of management will lead out of it, will master it. By the way, economists did not. Some say they had, that actually that's not true, or they have been very much too late. 95% of the economists in the Anglo-Saxon field, but also in Germany, in June 2008 predicted a growth rate of some 3% by the end of the year, and not one of them predicted the Lehman collapse, although even in January of 2009 Bear Stearns have already gone bankrupt. So look, these signals were visible very long. Now we looked at it from different angles. We understand society and business and economics, the economy, as a very large and complex system, the complexity of which coming from its interconnectedness, globally so, the dynamics of such interdependent and interrelated systems feed back on themselves. That's a cybernetic phenomenon, and bring about most profound change at lightning speed. And for these things, new kind of management is necessary. And with economic eyes alone, with economic means, it was at best partly discoverable, but when we looked at it with our systemic tools, it became quite clear.
自从泰勒提出科学管理到现在，管理的理论经历了很大的发展和变化，但是在实践领域，人们面临的问题似乎并没有改变。那么，您是否能为我们来解释一下管理理论对于公司治理实践的意义呢？
Because 80%, 90% of today's management theory is just rubbish. Yes, they jump on the bandwagon, they produce fads and fashions without much relationship with the practical world of people, of the entrepreneur. They think in financial terms only, they think on the stock exchange. That's not what the real world of the real economy is, and what the real questions of the entrepreneur and the executive really is. That is one point. The reason of it, one of the reasons of it, is that they have very, very little contact with the practical side of running, of operating a business. They are sitting at the universities in their chairs and speculate about how the world looks like, but then you never find out it like that. So there are very small number of authors which are worth reading and studying, but studying very carefully, and I select but one. This is a good friend of mine, Professor Peter Drucker, of Austrian origin, as I am, but then having lived almost his entire life in the Anglo-Saxon room in the United States. And Peter Drucker is one who has not invented. Many say he has invented management, but that's not true. But he was the first, or one of the first, to discover, first of all, the importance of this function, of this invisible function. And he was able, because he was a very talented author, he was in a position to describe this managerial function in a way that one could learn it and that one could teach it. So if the younger generation would, or people at large in organization would study Peter Drucker, it would help them very, very much. In particular, they would get immunized against fads and fashions, you see. But Peter Drucker has formulated management for the 20th century. But now that's almost very, very past, you see. And when we met, he used to say, he knew about that, he was aware of it, and he said, look, I have formulated management of the 20th century, and you, being much younger than I am, have to go on to continue and reinvent it for the 21st century. That was even what he said me when he met last in January 2005. It was the year when he died in November. I knew it was the last time we will meet, and so this was, so to speak, his heritage. And that we had done long ago. We started long ago because we had seen with our systems cybernetic tools, the crisis coming.
苹果的创始人乔布斯被称为是一个伟大的领导者。那么您是如何来评价他？对于一个企业来说，创始人的性格起着怎样的作用
？Steve Jobs is a very remarkable person, and but not for the reasons that generally are quoted after his death. Of course, he was an inventor of new software, new design, above all, new functions in all sorts of devices, and for that matter, he is certainly one of the greatest innovators in a long time. On the other hand, what to me is much more important, Steve Jobs never attended a business school. And that was his greatest advantage, because he did not fall into the traps of wrong teaching. He did not, to give some examples, he did not care about the value of the shares of Apple. They hovered along very, very, very long time, very unsatisfactorily, and nobody really cared for Apple stocks. It was only after 2006 that the Apple stock price went up like a rocket, and Apple then became the very the company with the highest stock value, or at least one of those companies. So Steve Jobs cared about what I have recommended very long ago. He cared about the purpose of the company, which to him was not money making or profit making, but it was making the best sorts of products to a particular group of customers. So he was strongly customer oriented and not shareholder oriented. A second thing is Steve Jobs cared about the mission of Apple. And the mission is always consists of three things. First, the need outside, and he understood his clients very, very well. So he knew what the need of his customers are. Second, the strength. Where is Apple really strong at? Among other things, design, functionality, and the beliefs. What do we believe in? And he has surrounded around him quite a number of persons who, like he does, believed in these values and purposes of Apple. I think these three things enabled Jobs, or characterized very much who he was and what it really did, and what explains his success. One of the problems, of course, is that Steve Jobs was, as an entrepreneur and as a leader and as an innovator and an inspirer of the entire company, probably much too strong, because for the followers it's very, very, very strong to his successors to live up to the expectations. And the first thing already has been done wrong, namely to present the iPhone S4 in the same way as Steve Jobs himself would have done. But it's an old principle, very proven. You must not walk in the shoes of your predecessor. You have to be different if you want to be a leader after. It's even the more important if your predecessor was a very strong person like Steve Jobs.
您写了很多本关于管理学方面的书籍，那么是否能为我们的网友推荐1到2本呢？
There's one book which I'm honored to say has just been by a jury put among the 100 most important management books of all times. This is Managing Performing Living. And this is really of universal and I think long-term validity, and so I could strongly recommend to read this for, in particular, the younger generation. I am at the moment working on a 6-fold series about the overall title, Managing How to Master Complexity. First 3 volumes have already been published. 2 of them, I think, are already translated into Chinese also. And the third one, which I have finished at the beginning of 2011, is about strategy. The first one was an overview volume on the essence of the management craft. The second one is about corporate policy and corporate governance, and its subtitle says how how to organize the world in such a way as to make it self-organizing. That's on corporate policy and governance. And then the third one is on strategy. On the right corporate strategy. And in that book I have already also explained our most powerful change management tools on macro change, which can deal perfectly well and in lightning speed in 3.5 days, what with conventional methods is not possible at all.